If you were here last Thursday, you know that this is a series that Jackie's Academy is putting on with the lovely Dr. Yamicia with the Labora Collective. Um, I'm getting attacked by a fly again. Um, so last Thursday, y'all, we talked about how the rulings in these cases that we're seeing with all the black deaths, right? That the ruling ain't just the label, right? It's the gate, right? And Dr. Connor broke that down to for us, right? With data, right? Um, so today, okay, Dr. Kana is going to talk to us about who decides and why that matters. And y'all, I flipped through, this deck, obviously, prepare myself, see what she's going to be really, diving into. And there was shit in here that like blew my mind. I had no idea. I had no fucking idea. So, this series is rolling through September. It will be every Thursday at the same time. So make sure you catch it and tell a friend and share it and make sure you are subscribed to the lovely Dr. Yamicia Khanna, and make sure you support her independent research. Okay, so purchase a paid subscription. All right. So with that being said, let's kick tonight off. So who decides and why does this matter?
Yeah, first I want to apologize to people in ahead of time because I feel like I'm just so all over the place. You know, when you have one of those days where it's just, you're just not feeling it. And so I apologize if it's a little rough. So just putting that out there. Um, and so I think, the thing oh my gosh, I think your fly came across the screen
See?
to touch my yeah, because it's, like, flying into my face. It's like it's like the next thing on this day. I think, what when people so many systems that we have, you assume that, like, there's a lot more behind them, right? There's a lot more depth, there's a lot more, um, just body of knowledge,
Hmm.
a lot more, expertise, and when you actually go inside these systems, you realize that's not the case, and I think, the criminal justice system is definitely one of those places, where we put over a lot of trust, and, honestly, we put you know, we give up a lot of rights, right? Um, we give the state power, the power to use violence, essentially, and the contract supposedly behind that is the state is supposed to protect us. And if we are harmed or hurt, the state is supposed to be our advocate. Um, but the deeper you kind of understand the system, the more you realize that that entire premise is false. Um, the premise that we have basically ceded our rights over to have a state that's benevolent, that takes care of people, that when someone harms you, that state is a good actor. That they're not fulfilling some of the most basic responsibilities that they have. And that's what we're gonna be talking about here, right? So, most people assume if you die in a suspiciously or, if someone if you were a victim of a crime, there is a forensic pathologist, someone who has been trained, someone like what you see on CSI, right?
Hmm.
That's seen hundreds of these, that is, like, looking under the microscope and really, kind of using all of their brain to try to understand who hurt you or who hurt someone in your family. And in much of the country, that is not what is happening. And that's really, really important, I think, for people to understand. And so the question is, who are these people who are ruling on these suspicious deaths in your county? What training do they have? And that's not a question that I really asked myself much before I started preparing for this series, right? And when I started asking that question, it's been really eye opening.
And think about it, right? So you asked yourself this question, and like you just said, I didn't think about this question either, and I'm sure the most of the people watching didn't think about the question. And I think the reason why, I'll speak for myself, is that when I think about what you're talking about, to me, what comes to my mind is standards, national standards. So stupidly, and of course I say stupidly because we live in a country that every state can make up its own damn laws within policing, but I'm stupidly over here thinking, oh, we have national standards for this. And of course, these national standards, because we're talking about life and even after death, it's still life. It's justice for that life that was taken, that there, of course, are going to be people who are educated, expertise, like you said yourself, in these positions. And so, like I said, when I was looking through your slides, and I ain't going to say shit, but when I was looking through your slides, I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? I legit had a what the fuck moment.
Yeah, so, do you wanna share the slides? Would that be
Yeah,
helpful
yeah,
for people?
I could. Now, give me a second. Hold up.
I can send you,
I have them. Just give me one
yeah,
sec, because I
you have
can
them. Okay.
absolutely do it. I do. I do. I do. Aisha sent them to me because she's wonderful. While y'all are watching me do that stupid click thing too, where I'm like leaning in close and
Yeah.
all that shit. I look all like I have never touched electronics before in my fucking
Well, that's
life.
what whenever, like, you're on video and you have to do something technical, it's like it's like nothing works, the buttons don't go, like, everything freezes, it's always
Yeah,
the
it's
worst.
cute. It's real cute. I'm here though. I'm here. So, all right.
Um,
See, do I have to have a double screen?
I don't think
Think
so.
so? Okay, let me
I'm al
try.
I'm also happy to share from my end if that's helpful, but then
Yeah,
then
just
people have to
I
sit through the
oh,
same.
wait. I think I could do it. Oh, look at this, y'all. She
Oh my
did
gosh,
it. She
why?
Does it look okay?
Yeah, it looks great, yeah.
All right. All
So if
right.
you wanna go to the next slide.
Next one.
Next one, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think
Sorry.
people think of you can go to that one,
Okay.
the corner, yeah, the one after this one, yeah. So in the United States, the way that this works is, it runs death investigations through kind of a patchwork of medical examiners and coroners. And then, which one you get is decided by your county, and not necessarily by the state. And a coroner in many jurisdictions is an elected official with no medical requirement at all. And so this is not the situation, the CSI situation where someone has this deep, depth of expertise, and they have been trained to look, from a non-biased perspective, at what happens to deceased bodies and how you can, basically get information from there. Um, this is in most places, it's someone with very little training. So you can go to the next slide. And so I focus in on Mississippi, because so many of these cases, have come from there. And yesterday, when I was preparing, I started, we made the first kind of sweep through to try to kind of gather as much information as we could. And, once we got, sufficient numbers, to really make this into a proper research study, we have been kind of deepening the investigation. And what that deepening looks like is, defining a methodology. So, where are all the places we're going to be looking for these sort of cases? And so some of them are really in what you would think, like just the equivalent of a Google search. Um, but then, there are other, especially when you're doing searches with computers, there are other ways that you can search that is the computer's equivalent of a Google search. And that really allows you to pull lots and lots and lots of data. And so we have been, going across all 50 states, trying to just understand, one, what is out there, um, uh, what is the best information that we can get, how we can corroborate the information. And so starting with, like, social media, and then going to the media, going to news stories, and then going all the way into like court dockets, right? To try to get a sense of everything together. And so we have the deepest body of knowledge in, or to date, in, for this particular study in the geographic South, obviously, because we started there. And so a lot of the things we're going to be talking about are going to be in southern states, but that is not to say other states don't have problems as well. And so just because we haven't named a state doesn't mean we're not looking into it. And as we, understand things more, we'll be sharing that information. So, to use Mississippi as an example, Mississippi has a statutory qualifications for a coroner,
Oops.
that they have to be, 21 years old. They have to be a registered voter, and they have to hold a high school diploma. So, not a medical degree, not hours of forensic training. And so, this is the person that has been empowered by the state to decide whether a young man who is hanging from a tree took his own life or was put there, right? That person has often no more medical training than the young man himself. And so when we're talking about why the families are so incensed and why they're so upset about these determination, that has to be part of the conversation, right? Because I think the state they like Jackie said, they depend on our goodwill and just acceptance that there are standards and that we don't need to worry, we don't need to worry our pretty heads about it, right? Because they've got this. And oftentimes what you will see is that that's a facade for their capabilities of taking advantage of people
Mm.
and families. And so I just wanted to kind of start there because, I think it's very easy for the state to make you think that you're crazy, or that the community is just, they're just, they don't understand, But what we have found time and time again is a lot of these things stay buried until the community itself says something. There have
Yes.
been, at least 3 or 4 cases alone, that went from suicide to undetermined just on community outcry. And so
Right.
that all that is to say is your work matters.
Yes, and to to add to that, this is where those community command centers come in. I told y'all how to stand them up. I told you how to run them. And every case I present, I tell you how to weave it into your community command center, right? To do exactly what Dr. Connor is talking about, to put the pressure, to have the visibility, to create the archives. Okay. So she's given you a wealth of knowledge, and I've given you how to use it. So do it. Are we on
Yeah,
our
so
next
next
slide,
slide.
my
Next slide. Yeah. So, in roughly 2,300 death investigation offices in the country, about 87 or roughly 4% are credited to the National Professional Standard. And so the vast majority of the death investigations that are happening are not to the standard, right? And so when you don't have a common standard, what does that mean practically? That means people have different training. They have different thresholds for ordering a full autopsy, and then different willingness to write undetermined. And so from the outside, they can look identical, but the actual quality of the evaluation is very, very different. Next slide.
And I would
Oh,
also argue too with the no standards that when you don't have standards that are, documented and held towards, the people's bias are gonna always win. And you're gonna see that more frequently.
right. I mean, to your point, I mean, the way of protecting people is by creating systems that for the same do the same thing every time there is a case, right?
Exactly.
And otherwise, if you're making, you're deciding over here, you're deciding over there, well, what is that decision really based on? Everyone has bias, right? That's what I try to tell people. Every single person has bias. Like to say you're unbiased is nonsense, right? um, the thing that you have to come into every situation with is understanding your bias and understanding and building systems that are going to help you control it. And
Mhm,
when people are telling you that they're not biased, those are the most biased people out there, right?
mhm.
Because you should be. I think about that all the time as a physician, right? Making sure that the way I take care of patients is the same regardless, and that is that's a safety method, the mechanism that you have, and that's just being aware, like that's having self
Yeah,
awareness. And too
mhm,
few people have like this self awareness to know when they have bias, and that's a real problem. Bias training has gotten such a bad rap, right? And that's because people don't want. It makes people feel uncomfortable to think that they have bias.
and I
Well,
think
I'm
the
sorry to tell you,
no,
it is life, right? It's like
well, and I think the other part too, though, is it's to be fair, I come from corporate America. It wasn't just the bias trainings where people would think, oh, blah blah blah. They didn't want to be uncomfortable. It was because of people who were leading them. So when you have white facilitators up there trying to talk about bias and they're being biased in their fucking presentation, it's a little awkward to sit there. I used to dread those things. So I think what needs to happen is bias training is absolutely essential, but these companies need to actually fucking roll it out correctly.
right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
No, I 100%. I definitely have walked out of so many trainings
Right?
because I'm just like, I can't listen
Lord.
to this. This is
No,
such a. I mean, it's almost insulting. Yeah, no. So I get it. I get
yeah. Yeah, you got
um,
me.
but the the need for us, the
Mhm.
way that we have executed it has been, you know, to your point, we've all kind of sat through those very it's just weird. But the
Cringe.
underlying problem that they're solving or trying to solve is a real problem that we all have to acknowledge that we have. And so the thing that we mentioned last time is what when does something get ruled a suicide? And why? Like, why is that why is that the thing people are reaching for? And it's because a suicide is convenient, right? It closes the case immediately. It If you are an underfunded office, well, now you don't have to run this expensive investigation. You might not have the staff to run. It doesn't You don't have to ask hard questions of anyone in the county, right? It's not gonna make anyone uncomfortable. It's not gonna generate press that might get you in trouble. There's no open file that is gonna be judged, by later. Undetermined or homicide, well, that's work. Very, 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 like, concretely, that's work for somebody.
Mhm.
Now you have a cost, you have scrutiny, you have conflict. And when people wanna reach for the easy answer, it's often the cheap answer. It's also the quiet answer. It's the one that just kinda lets things go, right? And they're always trying to encourage people just to let things go, let things go, right? And there's real harm in doing that, right? Because underneath that is we have a system itself that has remained unaccountable. Next slide.
Yeah, and then to add to that, you look at the racial layer to that. And I had something really dope to say that I forgot, so I'm just gonna fucking keep going and
No, you say it.
I don't even remember. No, I don't remember what it was. I had it written down and then my notes don't even make sense. I thought it was profound, so fuck. Go ahead.
The other thing is, so many of us, I mean, I will be the first to tell you, like when I was writing my thesis, I
Mhm.
watched documentaries and like Law and Order. It was like literally the two things I would watch
Did
because
you
you feel
watch
like,
ID?
no, it just I watch Law and Order, SVU, and
Okay,
the
okay.
reason is, you know how like you get used to having like TV in the background. This is before I had kids,
Yeah.
and it's almost like it's like mindless, like right. You just have this noise in the background. It's predictable. It was like cathartic in some ways, right? Like you know what's
Mhm.
going to happen in the hour of Law and Order, and so when I was stressed writing my thesis, and so that's what I did. And so what TV has taught us is what it's supposed to look like when the police investigate something. Um, you know, uh, it's taught us that you're supposed to look for these clues and, smart people are going through and they're, trying to piece out this or talking to these people. And that is very misleading. Eh, you know, the body, right? The body of the deceased, it is evidence, of what might have happened to them, but it's not the only piece, and it's not necessarily even the best piece of evidence, right? And
Mhm,
so, there are some, like, phrases that you see commonly, especially in these cases, right? That people are using to say, "Well, this happened versus this happened," like, no signs of a struggle.
mhm,
Well, that doesn't really tell you anything, right? A person can be overpowered, restrained, taken by surprise, um, and that looks like no signs of a struggle, but that's
mhm,
not a
mhm,
suicide, right?
mhm,
So the absence of struggle, is not the presence of a decision to die, right? The other thing is,
mm,
a scene was consistent with a suicide, so we see those phrases a lot. That might be true, but it's often very meaningless, right? A
mhm,
scene can be consistent with a suicide and equally consistent with a staged suicide, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so, what
mhm,
consistent tells you is that the scene was read for that particular reading, right? Not
mhm.
that it was tested against the counterfactual that no, this is a homicide that is designed to look like a suicide, right? And so you have these conclusions that are easily written, um, uh, and can be they make logical sense, but the actual data and the facts don't bear that out. So we can go to the next slide.
Alright, I did remember what I was gonna say, so really
Yeah.
quick for the last slide, when you broke it down and you were talking about the different, suicide, homicide, undetermined, when I first hit that slide and I was reading it, the reason why it impacted me so much was as I was reading it, I was like, "It makes complete sense to why our brothers and sisters are put into this category," and the reason why is because no one in this country asks questions about us. Nobody cares. So we're the easiest people to stick in that category because we are the people that are least likely to receive pushback. And it really hit me for a second because I was like, holy shit. It's almost like, and again, this is conspiracy at this point, but it's almost like this part of the system was also designed insidiously. And this part is being used exactly as how, places like Mississippi blueprinted it. That's how that slide hit me. It made all those thoughts just fucking come into my head.
So, to your point, there's a cost, right? There's a cost to doing an investigation, and people are human, and so you have people on the other side saying, "Do I want to pay that cost?" Well, what they're weighing is that, well, the people that I'm going to be doing this disservice to, what are they going to do about it, really, right? Versus, well, now the mayor is going to be calling me, or now I'm gonna have to be on the news. Or what if I make a mistake and they're investigating my files? I mean, these are real questions, and I'm not saying that those aren't things that they should be concerned about. But the flip side is
Mhm.
they are saying, well, on the other side, this we have a powerless community who what are they going to do about it? What are they going to inflict upon me? And I think that's where people can also find their power, right?
Yeah, sorry,
You
in a
have to make it
powerless
cost
community I'm so sorry, in a powerless community where they wrote the narrative for. So I feel like that's even more important because, sorry, we're a powerless community, but white supremacy also wrote the narrative about our community. So they can
exactly.
make almost anything that happens to our bodies seem logical because they create that fucking logic and they've instilled it into every single white person, every person in this fucking country. You know what I'm saying?
But that's why I commend these communities because you're not powerless, right? The power you have is saying, "This isn't right," right?
Correct.
Despite the fact they're going to put pressure on you to not talk. They're going to say that this might be inappropriate. But, all that is to say is you have to make it cost something to hurt you, right? And you even if you don't have money, even if you don't have a big position, well, what do you have? Well, you have your voice. You have your you have each other, right? And you need to make it cost something when power comes. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I had is we can't make this free. Right? We can't, and all the people who are trying to tell you not to say anything, they're trying to make it free to hurt you, and that you can't allow, right?
Mhm.
You have to make it cost them something, right? Now they have the
Mhm.
inconvenience, um, uh, of having to hear this, right? Having it brought up in the news, having it on social media, having, people calling their police, oh my gosh, this bug, having people call their police department asking those questions because that is another cost, right, to them. And so that's the thing we just need to remind people you cannot make hurting you free. You have
Mm.
to you have to make it cost something. Um, and so what this slide is really is saying I lost my place. Oh, sorry. Is about
Sorry, it's my fault.
the hyoid bone, right? So this is a bone in your throat. And a broken hyoid bone is supposed to prove strangulation, essentially. And but if you actually look at the data, um, that proof just dissolves. And that's the other thing why people need to be educated in this. Because
Yes.
again, I just told you these people, if they don't have the medical training, if they're essentially elected officials, well, they're probably getting their education from CSI, right? They're probably just using, what is it they think in their brain, and that's not the same thing as actually getting
Mm.
training, right? That they're
Mhm.
different things.
Mm.
Everyone thinks that like you can Google search your way to like a profession, but that's not true.
Oh,
Like,
Lord.
that's just not true. Like, it's not. It's deeper than that, y'all. Like, I'm
Mm.
sorry, and it just
Ah.
is. And that's what's really important for people to insist on that, right? And so, I was actually surprised when I looked at this data. So suicidal hangings, about 71% show a fracture. And it's less when, it's actually homicide. So manual strangulation often doesn't necessarily fracture the hyoid bone.
Mm.
In ligatures, when someone, basically ties a rope around your neck, that often doesn't fracture the hyoid bone. Neither of those are suicide, right? And so that is just, that is the point. The underlying point there is you need the training so that you can ask these questions, so you can try to understand, right? If you're gonna be making determinations on people's lives, then you need to really understand what you're talking about, and that understanding cannot come from things like television. Next slide. So what can a body actually tell you? So a body, like examining the body can tell you injury, it can tell you toxicology, so was there something in the person's system? It can tell you a window of time of death, like the physical findings essentially. It can't necessarily tell you intent, right? Was this chosen? Was this coerced? Was it inflicted? And so intent lives at the scene. And so at the scene, that's where you find if the ligature was furrowed, if there's petechia, meaning little blood vessels that are like bursting in your skin or your eyes, the position of the body, the person's history, the canvas, who was nearby. And in so many of these cases, right, that's the part of the work that gets closed down when they come to this conclusion so quickly, right? Because then they don't have to investigate the scene.
Mm.
And that is data, I mean, that is evidence you will never get back.
Mm.
If you do not collect that evidence within the first 24 hours, you're not gonna get that back. You have to protect that evidence. Otherwise, there'll be no way of really putting together the pieces, and that's the one of some of the biggest tragedies around this is that they denied the family the opportunity to really understand what was going on. Even if it was a suicide, even if you think that you are right, the family has a right to get to that determination, and you cannot get to that determination in 4 hours. I'm sorry, you
Mm.
can't. Can't do
Mm.
anything in 4 hours. Like, like, I mean, like, I
Ah,
have editing an essay takes longer than 4 hours. You're gonna
I'm
tell me you're gonna
saying
determine a cause of death
my fucking
in 4
content
hours? Come
prep
on.
takes longer than 4 hours. Jesus.
Yeah, like, I mean, I spent 4 hours putting
Ugh,
this deck together,
I'm
and now
saying,
it's you
Jesus.
know, you're gonna tell me
Ugh.
in that amount of time you can determine if someone was a suicide or not? No, I'm sorry,
Mm.
you can't. It's not reasonable. Next
Mm,
slide. And so, I wanted to look through a couple of cases that, are familiar to people and just talk through how this applies to, what we've been chatting about. And so in the, Sandra Bland, case in her, what looks like probably a murder, honestly. She was found hanging in a county Texas jail cell in 2015.
mhm,
This was 3 days after a state trooper pulled her over for failing to signal a lane change.
mm,
And I mean, when you see how trivial these things are, it's just
mhm,
it's
mhm.
really it should make you upset, right?
It really should. Like, people are not
It should
angry
make you
enough.
upset. Yeah,
Ugh.
she didn't put a blinker on, so now she lost
And
her
now
life.
she's
I mean,
dead. Like, what the fuck?
what kind of world are we living in?
I know.
And so the medical examiner ruled suicide by asphyxiation. So she was hanged with a clear plastic bag tied into a slip knot. And the prosecutor said the autopsy showed no defensive injuries on her hands that would typically indicate a struggle. And so that's the same phrasing we just talked about, right? And that phrasing is trying to do a lot of work right there. The autopsy also noted 30 small cuts on her wrists that were, probably self-inflicted within the previous weeks. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to establish a picture of someone who is unstable, right? Who is mentally ill, who, trying to make it look like, well, of course she committed suicide. Why not? But
Mhm.
then you need to actually let's look at the bigger picture of her life. Her family said she was days from starting a new job at her former school and had given no indication that this was not something that she wanted to do. Um, the family itself had to request and obtain an independent autopsy and has been calling for the Justice Department to review it. And her family and many legal experts have never stopped disputing the rulings. And the state's finding and the family's account have never been reconciled. Whose job is that, right? That they need reconciliation because to act as if the 30 small cuts on her wrist supersede everything else that the family's saying, everything else about her. That's not right. That's not right to do to a person. Go ahead.
And as you're talking about her, all I could think about was Javion, because that's what they did to this brother too. They said, "Oh, he went into a store. He bought a rope. Therefore, he killed himself." No. I mean, you have no intent behind why he bought that rope. There was a huge time window that there was no account for where he was or what he was doing. You don't know if people approached him. You have no idea, but they did exactly what they did to Sandra Bland. They said, "Oh, rope. So now we're going to push this narrative forward. We're not going to answer any other questions. We're going to ignore the fact that he just got a new job. We're going to ignore the fact that he had plans with his family. We're going to ignore all that shit. And we're just going to say, you know what? He bought a rope and then he decided to go die behind some random trailer lot. Like, sorry, I get angry. That's just stupid. Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
it is angering.
Ugh.
It does make you angry, and I think we have one of the like we're going to be talking about like from a like what does a profile of suicide look like? Because this is something it's not unknowable, right? Like this is something that as a physician, you have to, if you are a mental health physician, you have to make determinations on somebody's safety, right? Like that is part of your job. And so you have to know what it looks like before people commit suicide, right? And of course, you can't do it with no, perfectly every single time. But there are things, there are patterns, there are concerning signs and the thing that I find, like, the most infuriating about, these cases is that they make it seem like people just get up one day and decide they're gonna kill themselves. That's it. They just decide.
Yes, thank you.
For no
Thank you.
reason. You just
Thank
decide.
you.
You just decide, or one bad thing happens, and then now you're gonna I mean, there are that sometimes will happen, but that is rare, right? That is
Correct.
very rare.
Correct.
When people are suicidal, when people die of suicide, it is a huge tragedy, right? And it is often something that they have been struggling with for years. years, right? That is a typical profile. And so it should make somebody very hesitant to say that this is suicide unless you have that history, right? And
Mhm.
that's a very clear history. The family will tell you immediately, yes, this is a person who struggled with mental health. We've been, this is something we've been worried about for years. They've been in and out of psychiatric hospitals. They've tried multiple medications. They've been deeply, deeply depressed, which is its own tragedy, right? And I'm not trying to minimize that, but that's a very different profile than this is an 18-year-old, football player who has a girlfriend in the prime of his life, planning a trip for next week, and then he commits suicide. That doesn't check out to me.
Yeah.
Um, and so what can the family really do? Because that's the other criticism that happens is, people are like, why does the family immediately go and get a lawyer, right? As if they have any other recourse. The family has no other recourse. Like that's what people have to understand. There is no other reliable way to get information in this country when the police have decided you should not have it. There's no other way. So you have to get a lawyer and you have to sue essentially. So the reliable way is through the legal route. And so that's why you see time and time again these families get a lawyer very quickly. It's not because they are out. I mean, they have a huge tragedy. People try to make it sound like they're out for some nefarious gain. No, no, that's the only mechanism that the law has allowed for them to actually have their questions answered, and that is a problem, right?
Well, and
Um,
about it too, it's the only route that they give, right? Then, like you just said, then the state ignores the independent autopsies, and none of this shit is free. So, I
None of
mean,
it's free.
you know what I mean?
It's
None of this shit is free.
incredibly, incredibly expensive.
Exactly, and it's like and
Incredibly
then
expensive.
and then you're thinking about these Black families are out here and they're still trying, knowing that they're still gonna be hit with a process that is likely still going to fail them. You know what I mean? And it's just wild to me, y'all.
You know what this makes me think of? If you ever read stories about like Black mothers, after the Civil War, and the slaves were free, there was all sorts of like chaos, right? And one of the first things that Black families did was go and get their children, right? Because a lot of slave owners did not want to give back their children. They literally kept them and refused to give them back to the mothers. And so you have, and you could, if you imagine like the times, right? How much bravery it took. You have families, women who walked miles, right? So they can sit in front of a judge to petition for the life of their child, knowing that very likely they will not get a positive, result. They'll put like a sign on their back that they could die en route, right? Often the slave owners did not, that was seen as a very aggressive, hostile thing. Many women, families were beaten and killed, right? Trying to get their children back who are now free, right? And this is
Mhm.
what this reminds me of, right? Like
Yes.
when you love a
Yes.
child, the love of a mother, like
Yes.
it has no bound, it has no end, right? You will
Yes.
literally do anything you can. You'll climb up a mountain if you have to, right?
Yep.
With your like hands tied and like your
Yep.
feet tied together. And it's just that it just but just because people do it doesn't take
Mean it's not
away
gut
the
wrenching.
burden on them. Like, that is so unfair. Like, families are bankrupting themselves, right? I
Yeah.
need people to understand that. They're bankrupting themselves. They are selling everything that they own. They are committing massive amounts of resources, often their entire lives, right? Because it takes also a long time to be in court. You if once you get a lawyer involved, there are filings and filings and filings and paperwork and more paperwork, more paperwork. That's not free time for the lawyer gets paid, but the family doesn't, right? So they're putting in that time, right? And that's a huge investment of their life, and it
And
should not take a civil lawsuit to figure out how your child died.
well, and that's the thing is it's taking a civil lawsuit, right, to quote unquote figure out how their child died. But when you look at more than half of the cases I presented, you could be my 13-year-old daughter, who's watched a couple of murder mysteries, to walk onto a crime scene and say, "Yeah, nah, this is not." I mean, that's the part that kills me is we're not talking about, "Oh, you need to investigate harder because, this actually was ambiguous. This actually could have been." No, we're talking about we're talking about the army parts of my head right now, Lavena, that I just posted about, where it's physically impossible for her to have shot herself in the mouth with the gun they said because of the bullet hole was too small. Like, the shit is like, and so now me as the Black family has to go out there and get all my resources together and go bankrupt to show you the evidence is already it just drives me crazy. I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop ranting so you can continue with your
No,
lovely
I
presentation.
mean but that's right. I mean, it is infuriating. It should be infuriating because it's not right, right? Like these families deserve peace. Again, we started off the conversation talking about like what are we all owed, right? From the state, from the government, right? What is this contract that we have all signed that says we will do this in exchange. We will give up these rights, right? Because that's what it is, right?
Mhm,
We give up a lot of rights to the state. We give, the state has authority. It's the only party that has authority on violence, right? The state can come right in my house right now. Someone could come from the state and like kill me. And really, honestly, my family. What are we gonna do? Cry? I mean, we have no
of
way of
course.
of fighting that, right?
Yeah.
And that is a contract that we have committed to, right? But the state has an obligation on the other end of that. And that's, I think, the thing that is the most infuriating to me is they are not taking their obligation seriously. So if
Mhm,
you are pro police, then you should be pro these things, right? Because you want that's how you build up a profession, right? Like that's how you should take the integrity of your profession very seriously. Like, the
mhm,
reason that I think doctors should behave a certain way is 'cause I want there to be integrity. Why would I want there to not be integrity? I want my profession to be valued. I want to know that I am coming in and doing the best job that I can, and if I'm not, I need to be held accountable, right? Like, that is a professional contract that we have all signed, and the fact that, state actors feel like they can do this without accountability is, to me, it's abuse, right? These are people that should never have these positions because they do not have the right character um, to have it, right? Because the person who has the right character is a person who wants to be held accountable, is a person who wants there to be rules. Because let me tell you, the rules protect them and they protect us. Rules protect you both ways. It's
mhm,
j- it, this is a contract, and it protects everyone. And they want to have it so that they could just do what they want, and that's not what we all agreed to. That's not what this social contract is. We didn't say that are signing up to get abused, right? We're signing up to be protected. And if you're not going to protect us, then that violates the contract.
mhm.
Um, I think this is the last slide. Okay, the next one after this. And so, you know, the the thing I don't want to I want to leave people with some actual tangible
Are you cool if
next steps. Like things
I stop sharing, or do you have another?
oh, I can read it off. Yeah. Sorry, that this was the one I wanted to leave people with.
Okay, yeah, no,
So,
I wanna leave this up. My bad.
yeah.
No, 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 leave this up. Shit, yeah, go ahead.
So how do you make this tangible? These are the standards that we want, and we're not asking for anything that is not already their obligation. We are asking them to meet their obligation. And so the
Mhm,
first one is accreditation and physician review as the floor, the minimum for confirming a manner of death ruling, right? The second is the family has a right to see and contest the file. There should be a process in the system without you having to get a special lawyer, right? For you to be able to contest the file. If you think something is not right, that is data that the state should want, right? Because what we're not saying is there's also a murderer loose. If these are not suicides, you have a criminal in your midst, right? You have someone committing heinous crimes. You should want to find that person, right? Aren't you the law and order people? Shouldn't you want to do that? That would be like me as a physician. I want to know if there's a killer bacteria of a virus there, right? Because that's my job, right? Like that's my job. I want to try to keep people healthy. And so the first step is if there is something that is in your purview to prevent, shouldn't you want that
Mm,
prevented, right?
mhm,
And then the last thing is independent review of disputed findings. There should be, again, a process that if a
mm,
family has reason to, to suspect that there is something that doesn't make sense, that there should be a third party that can come and look at a case. And that should not be something that requires them having to get a lawyer, spend,
yes,
hundreds of thousands of
yes,
dollars in order to
yes,
have that. These are the basics for a fair system, right? A system where everyone could say, you know what, um, I I got my due because what I have seen in the cases that we've looked at, once the family gets closure, most
mhm,
families they want peace, right? They're
right,
not out here
exactly.
trying to like create problems at all.
And I
Most families
copied you. I copied you on my show when I was doing my show on Saturday, and I said, like, "These families" let me remind my audience, like, "These families aren't out here doing my work. Like, we're doing this on their behalf. This is not their goal. Their goal is to get justice for their loved one. They're not out
right,
here fighting white supremacy like me." You know what I'm
right.
saying? And so, like, they don't have an altered ulterior motive. They have one goal, and that is to get peace. I mean, like you said, like saying someone committed suicide, that is a very, very loaded conclusion.
Mhm.
And that does a lot to the family and the loved ones that are close
Yeah.
to them. Like, eh, so yeah, it's just, you say so many, and I'm not saying this, kiss your ass. You say so many profound things when you're on here. And the thing is that makes this series even more special is what it does to you. Like, when you get off because I'm still thinking about our conversations. I'm still thinking about your data. Now I'm thinking about how do I bring your data into every case? How do I bring your questions into every case? And all that does is make my articles, my work stronger and it makes the activism I have goosebumps literally. It makes the activism for a mad corny for these families stronger. You know what I mean? So like you're doing such tremendous work and I just hope that people that are watching understand that and understand how important it is to get what you're saying out there. Like, this was a whole fucking PowerPoint presentation for free, y'all, and you got the data you need to make the difference. Like Dr. Connor said, we're powerful, but we're powerfully united, right? I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna roll. You
No,
go.
I think it's great. I mean, that's exactly
We're
right.
powerful.
And you know what we're the bigger project that we're trying to do is everyone should have access to science, right? Everyone should have access to this data. Everyone should have access to these tools and and just to understand what's happening, right? Again, this is a part of being a citizen of a society. You should have access to information about that society, and that is what we are trying to make accessible to people. Because on the flip side, right? What the people who want to control and the people who are doing real harm, oh, they have data. They have a lot of data. They are crawling all over the internet, right? They are crawling all over social media, right? But what are they doing with that information? And that's the thing that is infuriating to me. Well, they're doing that information to surveil you. They're
Mhm,
doing that information, to stop lawsuits, right? If you got harmed by someone, well, how do you think they learn all of those things, when they come out with, like, "This person was blah, 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 blah." How
mhm,
do you think they learn all those? This is the same techniques that we're using.
mm,
Right, the same techniques that
mm,
we're using to, tell you what, is happening. Well, they're using those techniques to hurt people, and that's the thing that makes me aggravated, and
mhm.
it makes me incensed, is that, no, like, that's not right, right? So much work is going into hurting people, um we wanna just do a little bit on the flip side, right?
And
And
here
then
and
that's why
here
we do the work we do.
but here's the thing about your data, right? The thing that the Labora Collective is doing is you're giving the data that they don't want us to see. They don't want us knowledgeable on what, a suicide looks like. They don't want us knowledgeable on everything you broke down on those slides because what happens? Knowledge is power. Now, every person watching this show, I promise you, they're going to look at every fucking case they read differently. They're going to have a question. They're going to be on the phone and say, hey, and they got that from what you're doing, your independent data that we can trust. You understand that we know you're not sitting up here putting it over here just to make the story look a little fucking better. You know what I mean? And like that's so important. And we don't have that, right? We can't trust mainstream media. We can't even trust the CDC shit. You know what I mean? We can't trust anything right now. But I can tell everybody watching, they can trust you and you can trust
Thank you,
me.
that's very kind.
And this, like I said, this independent research is exactly what we need for our community command centers. Okay. And this is what you should be leveraging, and you should be making sure that your family and friends are aware of this data as well. You understand? You can present this shit too. You just always make sure you give credit where credit's fucking due, though.
That's very kind. So we put together this to share with people, and we'll keep updating. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Um, and then to the point about trust, I think trust is really important. So if you see something that we have put out that is wrong, please tell me. Like, I want to know. I am not trying out here to misinform people, but we're human, right? We're human. We do everything we can to try to investigate and try to understand. But if we're wrong, we'll be the first people to acknowledge that, because that's not my goal, right? And acknowledging when you're wrong, I think, is a really important part of trust. And the other point is to say we will be wrong, right? Because that's the other thing that makes people scared about putting out science. And the reason there's not more health and science literacy is because scientists have been trained that until you understand every single thing about something, don't talk about it, right? And because if you're wrong, then you're going to be criticized. But what does that mean on the flip side? Well, that mean on the flip side, what happens is people aren't educated.
Mhm,
That's what COVID was, right?
mhm,
Like, we
mhm.
had spent years, decades, there's no health and science literacy out there, right? And then we expect people to understand right in the moment, when we have a pandemic, "Oh, well, now you need to trust us." Well, who are you? Right? Like, who even are you, right? These people, like, weren't a part, and that was a real failure. And so
Mhm.
we are deliberately trying to do things differently, which means there might be times we get something wrong, and that
Yeah.
is a calculated risk that we are taking to come out here and talk before and at the top of the board. I try to say research is still in progress, meaning this is an active
Yes.
place of research. We are investigating things. I'm actively always, and the people on my team can tell you, I'm like looking, I'm reading through this stuff. I'm looking at it myself. I'm confirming it. I'm in databases. We are cross-referencing things, and that takes time. And so things will evolve. I usually have and that's the other thing. If you want to see things as, more preliminary, will come inside of our community, because that's where I keep the stuff that's really, I can't say it in public yet. Because there's other things that we're finding that I can't say it in public, but it is it's worth it. And so, join us there if you want to know. Again, take understand what I am saying. I am making an honest disclosure, that I am putting things in front of you that are in progress, so that you can have the information when it's still relevant, as opposed to 5 years from now when I've published a paper. And that is something we're trying to do deliberately. And we want to work in community with people to understand that there are pros and cons to that approach. And so, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, no, I love it. And what I was gonna say was, I mean, you're in good company. People that's been following me for a while know that there's been times where I had to put out a post retraction. I'm confident, I'm passionate, and that the story has gotten me so fucking good that I just go out and I post, and I'm like, shit, I didn't do C, D, and E, and now I just posted something that's wrong, and then you see it. I go back and say post it, and I apologize. So That's what you're doing, that's what happens with that. That shows you have integrity, and that's why I said they can trust you, because you're showing us your process. You're showing us it in real time. You're opening your doors, you're being vulnerable. You're not hiding shit. You're being transparent, and that's a good leader, and that's somebody that we can trust. I'm not saying just to trust you because you're beautiful. I'm saying to trust you because of the the expertise and again, the due diligence that you're doing um, with transparency and everything, and your research, like I said, I love the way your how you release your stuff, right? Because I'm part of your community, because I'm able to use your stuff now to make my cases more like that. Like I created like new Instagram carousels that leveraged your data to make it
Oh,
out
I love
there, and
that.
one of them almost went viral, and it was your data. You
That.
understand?
I
You know what I'm
love
saying? So
that. Oh,
like,
I love that.
yeah, yeah. So like you're doing it, right? And we are at an hour, so I should probably close it, but you're doing it. And like I always tell y'all, if you're in my community, knowledge is powerful, right? It's power. And like this is it. She's given you so much fucking knowledge. So use it, repurpose it, okay? We will be back with our third episode of this amazing fucking series called The Classification Problem next Thursday at the same time. All right, y'all. Like I said, this series is going all the way through September. All right. I will always post an article post. So you'll always get this with a nice article that complements it. And as soon as you get off of this live, I need you to hop over to the lovely Dr. Yamicia Connor's page, and I need you to subscribe. Okay. And I also need you to remember that independent research is time. Time is money. Pay the woman. All right. All right. We'll see you
Okay.
again. Thank you again. I love having you on. Like I said, you make me think. You make me a better
Oh,
activist.
I love it.
Um,
Thank
and
you.
I adore you. So thank you so much for bringing all of this to Jackie's Academy. I'm honored to have you here. And I will see you again next Thursday.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.